Hey Queens, welcome back. Have you ever stopped to wonder what's really going on in his mind when he turns his back on you after you gave him everything? You loved him, trusted him, and poured your heart out, only to be met with indifference. That creepy smile that says he's only interested in playing his own game, treating you like you're invisible, like you were just a passing moment in his life. Does it sting? You feel the pain, but he's there, smiling. Do you want to understand the truth behind this? Hit that like button below and let's dive in. So, when you go silent, he's still laughing. But here's where it hurts. What if your silence wasn't the unexpected move you thought it was? What if, instead of hitting him with the impact you imagined, it was exactly what he was expecting? What if he always knew you'd eventually stop chasing him? After all your love, effort, and attention, what if he was just waiting for you to pull back, hoping you'd give up? He wanted you to be the one to walk away because, for him, you were always just an option. And now, as he sits there smiling at your silence, thinking he won, he couldn't be more wrong. He doesn't understand the power of your silence. He thinks it's a sign of weakness, a surrender. He believes he broke you, made you disappear into the shadows. But let me tell you this, Queen, your silence is your strength. He might sit there smugly, feeling victorious, but he doesn't know what's coming. Your silence isn't about begging for his attention or hoping he'll regret losing you. It's not about him at all. It's about you. You've stopped playing his game. You've stopped chasing someone who never valued you. Instead, you've stepped into your power, taken control of your own life. Your silence isn't weakness, it's your throne. It's you choosing your peace over his chaos, your dignity over his indifference. Let me tell you the ugly truth. He thinks you're predictable. He thinks that after all the love you gave him, you'll crawl back. He thinks you'll return, a broken girl begging for his approval. But he has no idea who he's dealing with. You're not a beggar, you're a queen. You don't need his validation. You've already moved on emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. You're standing tall in your own kingdom, and it's time for him to see that. While he sits there thinking he won, he's just playing his part in your journey. He may think he has you figured out, but he doesn't even know the game you're playing. Your silence isn't about him. It's about reclaiming your power, your worth, and your crown. And as for him, he may be smiling now, but it's the smile of a man who doesn't realize that the crown is no longer his to take. Your silence is your crown, Queen. It's the symbol of your strength, growth, and independence. It's the calm before the storm. You've just stepped into your power, and he'll never see it coming. So say it with me, Queens. My silence is my crown. Drop it in the comments, declare it to the world. You've risen above, claimed your throne, and nothing can take that from you. Let him sit there thinking he won, because when you rise, Queen, he'll realize he was never even in the game. You've crowned yourself number one. He thinks he won, but here's the reality. He thinks he's basking in the false pride of a victory, convinced that your silence means defeat. He believes that by making you disappear, he's erased your strength. He tells himself, I knew this would happen, as if he conquered something that was never his to win. But he's so wrong. He couldn't be further from the truth. What he doesn't understand is that your silence isn't surrender. It's the calm before the storm, the stillness before the rise of a queen. He expected drama. He expected you to cry, beg, chase him for an apology that was long overdue. He thought when you were silent, you were crumbling under the weight of his indifference. He thrives on the chaos he created. But when you don't give him that, when you choose silence instead, he thinks he won. But he hasn't even left the starting line. What he doesn't get is that your silence isn't part of some petty game. It's your power. He thinks it's a tactic to make him feel guilty, to make him wonder if he's lost you forever. But the truth is, your silence has nothing to do with him. It's your declaration of independence. It's your peace. It's your crown. You've stepped away from his toxic cycle. You're no longer playing by the rules of his twisted game. The moment you decided to take control of your life, you claimed your own kingdom. You see, silence isn't about making him miss you. It's about realizing that you no longer need his validation. You no longer need him in your world. He expects you to be glued to your phone, waiting anxiously for that message, for that sign that he's figured out what he lost. He wants you to beg, to break, to show him how much you care. But Queen, let me tell you this. You're not waiting for him. You're not waiting for his apology, his regret, or his recognition. You've already walked away from that toxic world. You've chosen your peace, and that's a move he never saw coming. While he's still trying to decode your silence, thinking it's part of his game, you've already left him behind. Your silence is your liberation. It's the moment you took back your power and refused to let anyone, especially him, hold you in a place of uncertainty. It's the sound of you stepping away from his chaos and into the calm, confident strength of your own kingdom. He may be sitting there thinking you're playing games, trying to make him miss you, but the truth is, you've already won. You've left him far behind in your rearview mirror, and you're building your life without him. His opinion no longer matters. His power is gone the moment you chose silence over his drama. He'll never understand that your silence isn't part of his manipulative cycle. It's you taking control of your life. Your silence isn't about guilt or punishment. It's about rebuilding your kingdom in peace without him. While he's stuck in his petty games, wondering why you're quiet and trying to decode your every move, you're already out of his reach. You're building something bigger than anything he could ever offer you. He never even realized the game had changed. And here's the truth he'll never understand. Your silence is your crown. It's not a cry for attention or a bid for closure. It's a quiet declaration that says, I am enough. It says that you no longer need him to validate your worth. You are the queen of your own kingdom, and no one can take that from you. Say it with me, queens. My silence isn't a game, it's my crown. Drop it in the comments loud and proud. Because while he's still stuck in his petty games, you've already stepped into your reign. You've risen above it all, and he'll never understand that he was never even in the game. You've crowned yourself number one. Now, let's talk about the mask he wears. He walks through life like a performer on stage, wearing a mask that's as fragile as it is carefully crafted. This mask is built on lies, arrogance, and empty confidence. To the outside world, he's untouchable, a king in his own mind. He moves through life like someone superior, someone who always wins, someone who controls every situation with ease. The mask he wears shows power, charm, and strength. But behind that mask is a different story. Behind the illusion, there's fear, insecurity, and an emptiness no amount of bravado can fill. He hides behind this facade because the thought of being exposed as weak or vulnerable is something he cannot bear. For years, he's perfected the art of deception. He knows exactly what to say, how to flash that perfect smile, and how to keep his true intentions hidden in the shadows. He thrives on maintaining the illusion because without it, everything he's worked for would crumble. Without the mask, he's nothing. But here's the truth he's been running from for too long. The mask he wears is cracking. He'll pretend it's not happening. He'll act like everything is fine, like he's still in control, still untouchable. But deep down, he knows the cracks are forming. The lies are catching up to him, and the pressure is building. His mask isn't made of steel. It's made of fragile glass, and every lie, every manipulative game, every person he's hurt makes the fractures bigger. He's terrified of being exposed, terrified of the world seeing him for what he truly is. A scared, insecure man who wears arrogance like armor to protect himself from his own inadequacy. He needs to feel superior because the idea of being ordinary or forgotten is something he can't bear. For a while, his mask worked. He fooled you. He made you believe he was strong, that he was worthy of your time, your love, your energy. He played the role of someone who mattered in your life, all while treating you like you were disposable. But what he didn't count on was you waking up. The moment you saw through the cracks in his mask, everything changed. You saw past the illusion. You saw the weakness, the insecurity, the fear. You saw the little boy hiding behind the facade of a man. And now, everything he thought he controlled is slipping away. He expected you to stay in the dark, to keep believing his lies, to keep giving him the power to take from you without remorse. He thought you'd never see him for what he really is, a hollow shell of a man, hiding behind fake confidence. But Queen, you've seen the truth, and now you're free. He couldn't stand facing the truth, but now, Queen, you see it all. Every time he ignored you, dismissed your feelings, or played with your heart, it wasn't strength, it was weakness. It was his desperate attempt to cling to control as he felt it slipping away. He acted indifferent, pretending not to care, because the reality was too painful for him to bear. You were slipping through his fingers, and his mask was starting to crack in front of you. He couldn't stand the thought of being exposed, of being seen for who he truly is. And now you're standing in your truth, no longer fooled by the illusion he created. You see him now, not as the strong, untouchable figure he wanted you to believe he was, but as a scared, insecure man who cannot face vulnerability. Behind that mask is a man terrified of being seen for who he really is. A man who spent years hiding behind layers of manipulation and deceit. He thought he could bury his true self forever under the weight of his false bravado. But reality has a way of catching up. The cracks in his mask are spreading, and no amount of lies or manipulation can cover them up. Every game he played, every heart he broke, every person he used, those are the scars on the mask he wears. He thought he could fix those cracks with more lies, more distractions. But even the most elaborate facade has a breaking point. The mask will shatter, piece by piece, until all that's left is the broken, exposed person who's been hiding behind it. And when it does, it's going to be ugly. He's been so focused on convincing the world, and himself, that he's untouchable, that he's created a prison of his own making. The mask was his only protection. Without it, he has nothing left to hide behind. No more lies, no more manipulation, just the cold, harsh truth of who he really is. And that truth will haunt him forever. Friedrich Nietzsche once said, "Whoever fights monsters should see to it that in the process he does not become a monster." But he became the very monster he feared. He needed to manipulate others to feed his fragile ego, to hide from the truth that he was weak and insecure. He spent his life convincing everyone that he was in control, that he was superior, but deep down, he was terrified of being exposed as the man he truly is, a man who hides behind arrogance to protect his fragile sense of self-worth. But you, Queen, are different. You don't need to wear a mask. You don't need to pretend to be someone you're not. You face the pain, the heartbreak, and the betrayal head-on. Instead of hiding behind a facade, you tore yours off. You embraced your truth, and in doing so, you became stronger. You didn't run from the struggle, you faced it, and you rose from the ashes. Your resilience wasn't born from wearing a mask. It was born from being real, from being vulnerable. You allowed yourself to feel, to heal, and that made you unstoppable. While they're trapped in their illusions, you've built your world on authenticity. They hide from their reality, but you've owned yours. They rely on deception to survive, but you thrive on the strength of truth. They're terrified of being exposed, but you embrace your scars because they're the proof of your survival. Your strength comes from the fact that you've lived through it all and come out on top. Let them wear their mask. Let them cling to their fragile facade, pretending they're still in control. You don't need to expose them. Their own actions will do that for you. Their mask will crack on its own, piece by piece, until there's nothing left but the empty shell of a man who thought he could hide from the truth. Say it with me, Queens. I see through the mask. Drop it in the comments, declare it, own it, live it. Because while they're desperately trying to keep their mask intact, you've already moved on. You've already risen higher than they ever imagined. And when that mask finally breaks, they'll realize they were never as powerful as they pretended to be. And you were never as weak as they hoped you'd be. You are real, and that's a power they'll never understand. Now, here's the storm he never saw coming. He thought he had you figured out. He thought he knew exactly how you'd react, how you'd respond. He believed he could predict your every move, control your every emotion, and bend you to his will. But the truth is, he never saw you for who you truly are. And now that you've seen through him, everything he thought he could control is slipping away. Queen, he was dead wrong. He thought your silence was a sign of weakness, that your absence meant defeat. He expected you to beg, to cry, to crumble under the weight of his abandonment. He assumed you'd fade into the shadows, broken and defeated. But what he never saw coming was this. You're not fading, you're building. You're constructing something so powerful, so unstoppable, that when it rises, it will leave him in awe, realizing he was never in control, never even close. He thought he was the storm, but Queen, you were the storm he never anticipated. Think of a volcano, still, quiet, seemingly lifeless on the surface. He believed you were finished, buried beneath the rubble he left behind. But beneath that calm exterior, power was brewing, pressure was building. And when the time comes, you will erupt, unstoppable, undeniable, impossible to ignore. He thought he'd burned you to the ground, that you'd never rise from the ashes, But what he failed to realize is that the ashes are where legends are born. You are the phoenix rising from the fire he thought would consume you, and he'll never understand how you turn destruction into creation, pain into power, and silence into a roar that he'll never forget. He expected you to play small, to remain a victim, to break down. But what he didn't expect was for you to rise as a warrior. While he celebrated your downfall, you were sharpening your mind, building your strength, fortifying your soul. Every tear, every lonely night, every moment of doubt became fuel for your transformation. He thought he was breaking you, but in reality, he was shaping you into someone unshakable. You didn't just survive, you thrived. And when he finally realizes what you've become, it'll be far too late. He believed your silence was a plea for him to miss you, to crawl back to you, but he was wrong. You didn't go silent because you were broken. You went silent because you were done. Done begging, done explaining, done wasting your precious energy on someone who never saw your worth. You stopped seeking validation from him and turned that energy inward, channeling it into your dreams, your goals, your purpose. You stopped waiting for his recognition because you finally realized something critical. He never defined your worth. You always have. He thought he could control you, set your limits, and define your path. What he didn't expect was that your silence wasn't a cry for attention or a desperate plea. It was a choice to reclaim your power, your peace, your kingdom. And while he's still trying to figure out what happened, Queen, you've already moved beyond him. You've stepped into your own world, one where his hold over you no longer exists. He thought he was the one in charge, but you've taken the throne. His absence didn't destroy you, it made you stronger. He never imagined that you'd turn his neglect into the fuel for a life far more powerful than he could ever comprehend. You are the lion that doesn't need to roar to prove it's the king of the jungle. Your power is felt, not announced. Your silence is proof of your strength, and your absence is the echo he can never escape. You've stopped being someone he could manipulate. Now, you are someone he will never forget, and a woman he will never have again. Say it with me, queens. I am the force he never saw coming. Drop it in the comments, declare it, own it, live it. You are the one he will never forget. Now, let's talk about reclaiming your power like a true queen. He thought he could shake you. He thought he could break you. He believed that by pushing you to the edge, by throwing you into the storm, you'd crumble. But what he never expected was that you would emerge stronger, more unyielding, and more untouchable than ever before. He never anticipated you becoming the anchor in your own storm. Imagine a ship lost at sea, battered by relentless waves, with the wind howling and the storm threatening to swallow it whole. For a moment, it seems like the ship might sink, but deep within, beneath the surface, there's an anchor, silent, steady, unwavering. No matter how violent the storm, that anchor keeps the ship grounded. Queen, you are that ship, and your anchor is your inner strength, the ability to stay calm, steady, and resilient no matter what the world throws at you. That is the true power of reclaiming yourself. Like a Stoic, it's not about fighting the storm, it's about standing firm in the face of it and allowing it to pass. You are unbreakable. Your strength is in your stillness, in your ability to rise above, and in your refusal to be defined by anyone but yourself. He can try all he wants to break you, but you are the storm that will never be defeated. Queen, they thought your silence meant you were weak, that it signified defeat. They believed you would fade away, disappear into nothingness, and that they'd broken you for good. But what they never anticipated was the anchor within you, the unshakable strength that refuses to bend, refuses to break. Reclaiming your power like a Stoic isn't about seeking approval from others. It's about knowing that your power isn't tied to the world around you, but is deeply rooted in what happens inside of you. When you realize this, no storm, no betrayal, no person can ever sink you. As the great Stoic philosopher Marcus Aurelius said, you have power over your mind, not outside events. When you master your mind, you master everything around you. The person who controls their emotions becomes untouchable. People may try to throw stones, stir chaos, or create confusion, but if you remain anchored, none of it can touch you. You'll stand firm, unshaken, no matter how hard the world tries to shake you. Reclaiming your power isn't about pretending to be invincible. It's about acknowledging the pain, feeling the emotions, but then choosing not to let them control you. It's about deciding that your peace is more important than anyone's ability to disrupt it. It's knowing that your worth is not defined by how others treat you, but by how you respond to what they throw at you. Think of a candle burning steadily in the dark. The night may be long and oppressive, but that candle continues to shine, quietly, without fuss. The darkness can't extinguish it because the light comes from within. That's you. They thought they could snuff out your flame with their indifference, their manipulation, their games. They thought your silence meant your fire had gone out. What they didn't realize is that your flame wasn't meant to shout. It was meant to burn quietly, steadily, and endlessly. While they searched for the explosive fireworks, they overlooked the quiet flame that would outlast it all. Reclaiming your power means knowing when to walk away, not to prove anything or to be noticed, but because you've outgrown the toxic situations they created. You've outgrown their games and drama. You no longer need to engage in battles that don't serve you. You choose your battles wisely, Queen. Not every insult or betrayal deserves your time and attention. True strength lies in knowing when to let go and keep moving forward. As the philosopher Seneca wisely said, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." They crave power over you. They thrived on controlling your emotions, keeping you small, making you doubt your worth. But by taking away their power to manipulate you, you reclaimed your energy. The moment you stopped waiting for closure, you reclaimed your peace. When you stopped needing them to see your worth, you reclaimed your freedom. They thought they held the strings, but what they didn't realize was that the power to cut those strings was always in your hands. They expected you to be their puppet, dancing to their tune, falling when they let go. But you were never the puppet. You were the one holding the blade. Reclaiming power like a Stoic means realizing that your happiness, your future, your success, none of it depends on anyone else. You don't need anyone to validate your worth because you've always been worthy. They thought power came from making others submit, but true power comes from rising above it all. It comes from standing tall when everything around you is trying to break you down. It comes from being your own savior, realizing you no longer need anyone to apologize or recognize what they did to you. You are your own rescue. As the philosopher Epictetus said, "We suffer not from events, but from our judgments about them." You can't change what they did, you can't alter the past, but you can control how you let it shape you. You can choose to let their actions make you bitter, or you can use them as fuel to make you better. Here's the truth they never saw coming. The most dangerous person in the world is someone who doesn't need anything from anyone. Someone who is whole, complete, and secure in themselves. That's you. You've reclaimed your power, not through revenge or confrontation, but through transformation. They thought your silence was a sign of defeat, but it was a declaration that you no longer live by their rules, seek their approval, or let them define you. Say it with me, queens. I am the queen who reclaims her power. Drop it in the comments, declare it, own it, and live it. You are the anchor that holds steady through the storm. You are the flame that burns brighter in the darkness. You are the master of your own mind, and when you reclaim that power, nothing and no one can ever take it from you. Now, let's talk about the move he never saw coming. He thought he had you cornered, that he knew the game, and that he'd already won. He was so sure of himself, so confident in his victory, that he let his guard down. He laughed, relaxed, basked in the illusion that you were done. But what he never saw coming, what he couldn't fathom, was your rise. While he sat there consumed by his delusions of triumph, you were working in silence, quietly building, quietly healing, quietly becoming the queen you were always meant to be. He thought your story had ended, that you were lost to him. But your silence wasn't the closing chapter. It was the prologue to something far greater. It was the beginning of your transformation. And when he finally realizes what's happened, it will be too late. He will see you rise higher than he ever thought possible, and he'll finally understand. You were never the one to be defeated. You were always the one meant to conquer. It's too late for him to stop you now. He thought he could leave and leave you stuck, trapped in the past, clinging to memories of his betrayal. He believed you would wait for closure, hoping he would return and finally acknowledge your worth. He assumed that by walking away, by turning his back, he could control you, that his absence would define you. But what he failed to realize, what terrified him deep down, was that you had already moved on. You had already risen. Like a seed buried in the ground, seemingly forgotten, invisible to the world, he thought you were dead, irrelevant, but underneath the surface, you were growing. The roots were stretching deeper, the seed was gathering strength, and one day when the time was right, you would break through the soil. Strong, unstoppable, undeniable. He thought he buried you, but in truth, he planted you, and now you were the force he never saw coming. As Lao Tzu wisely said, silence is a source of great strength. He thought your silence meant defeat, but he never understood its power. Silence isn't emptiness, it's potential. It's the calm before the storm. While he believed you were lost in the quiet, you were building an unshakable foundation. You were evolving, becoming something he could never control. The flip they never saw coming wasn't some grand confrontation or emotional outburst. It wasn't about revenge or pleading for their approval. It was far simpler and far more powerful than that. The flip was your transformation. You stopped explaining yourself. You stopped needing their validation. You stopped playing their game. You removed yourself, not because you were broken, but because you had outgrown them. And when they finally notice your absence, it will hit them like a storm they never prepared for. They'll search for the person they thought they left behind, the one they thought they broke. But that person no longer exists. You are no longer the one waiting for their approval. You are the queen who doesn't need permission. You are the throne they can never reach. Rumi once said, "Try not to resist the changes that come your way. Let life live through you." Every wound he caused became the door through which your power entered. Each time he dismissed or underestimated you, he handed you the tools to reclaim your life. And now you are unstoppable. He thought he could keep you trapped in the past, but you've outgrown that version of yourself. While he stayed stuck in old patterns, you were building a future, a life where his existence no longer mattered. The flip wasn't about hurting him. It was about freeing yourself. It was about reclaiming your future, your worth, your kingdom. They thought they would find revenge, closure, or a dramatic confrontation. But you gave them none of that, just silence. And that silence will echo louder than any words ever could. People like him expect noise, drama, and fireworks. But when you respond with nothing, when you respond with your absence, it terrifies them. It forces them to confront themselves and realize they have no hold over you. And that's something they've been avoiding their entire life. Epictetus said, "Freedom is the only worthy goal in life. It is won by disregarding things that lie beyond our control." Your greatest move wasn't revenge. It wasn't retaliation. It was freedom. It was walking away, building a life so full of purpose and power that their opinion no longer holds weight. The flip wasn't about hurting him. It was about claiming your throne, stepping into your rightful kingdom. He thought he was the king, the one you could never replace. But the truth is, the real throne was always yours. He couldn't see it because he was too blinded by arrogance. He thought he ruled your heart, but he was just a man lost in his own illusion. You finally saw it for what it was, empty and meaningless. While he was playing king, you were building your kingdom. You gave him your loyalty, your love, your time. You brought value into his life, but he couldn't see it. He made you believe it was his presence that made you whole, but it was your light that made everything shine. Without you, he's just another man. He thought he wore the crown, but you were the one who always wore it. Maya Angelou said, "Never make someone a priority when all you are to them is an option." He made himself an option, thinking you would always chase after him. But now, Queen, you see the truth. You never needed him to sit on the throne. You were always the one who wore the crown. He thought being chased, desired, and needed made him valuable. But real worth doesn't come from being pursued. It comes from being irreplaceable. He took from you, believing he deserved it, never realizing that what he was taking was priceless. Now, he's lost it. He walked away thinking he left you behind, but what he really did was leave behind the best thing that ever happened to him. He thought someone else could replace you, but deep down, he knows that's impossible. You are the crown. And when he finally realizes it, when he sees you rise, thrive, and live a life without him, that's when the regret will hit. Not because he loved you, but because he lost access to something irreplaceable. Your worth was never determined by how he treated you. It was yours from the beginning. Let him think he was the king. Let him believe he was the prize. It doesn't matter anymore. You've moved past the illusion, past the lies, and past the need for his approval. You've stepped into a world where you know your value, where you set the standard, and where you wear the crown. Say it with me. I am the queen, and I wear the crown. Declare it, own it, live it. Because while he was busy pretending to be something valuable, you've been priceless all along, and now he'll never have access to you again. If this message resonated with you, Queen, share it with others who need to hear it. Your worth is immeasurable, and it's time the world knows it. Keep wearing your crown, always.